Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar today, Achieving Success One Conversation at a Time. This is an intro to our group coaching program, Fierce Conversations, with MAPS coach, Debbie Frapp. She'll also be going over how to create alignment with Fierce Conversations. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive the recording of this webinar today. Please feel free to share that recording with anyone in your market center that you think may benefit from the recording. If you have any questions for Debbie, please type them into the questions box located in your webinar taskbar. And following the webinar, if you have questions, you can always email us at fasttrack@kw.com. And that's all for me. So Debbie, you can go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paige. I appreciate it. And welcome everybody to the webinar today. I always love getting to introduce more people to Fierce Conversations, and it's always an interesting topic, and sometimes people are not quite sure what Fierce Conversations is all about. And due to the number of people that we have on this webinar and the number of people that have signed up to at least get the recording, first of all, I just want to have some gratitude and just thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule here. And my guess is because of the fact that you are signed up for this, on the call, getting the recording, you've got a need. And most likely that need is to be more effective in your communications. And you may actually know of some areas where maybe your communication is failing, such as you're being misunderstood, whether it's with your clients, whether it's with family members at home. And sometimes we just don't know how to have some of the conversations. And so we then just avoid them altogether. So what I want to do today is I'm going to introduce you to why would Fierce Conversations be a benefit for you. We're also going to talk a little bit about what is a fierce conversation. People hear the definition and they think it's about being aggressive. They think it's about, just when we just hear the word fierce, sometimes it just brings some different context to mind. So we're going to kind of talk about what that actually looks like. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what you can expect from the group coaching program. And we'll look at some of the simplest definitions of fierce, but mainly I want to give you some things too that you can walk away with just from this introduction webinar that if you put into place will absolutely begin to improve your communication. So I really just want to give you value today and also share some information with you. So we're going to take a look if my little screen is working there. There we go. We're going to talk about, you too can do a webinar. Click the right button, Debbie. There we go. All right. We're going to, what's in it for you? In other words, why would you want to be able to attend the Fierce Group Coaching Program? Let's go ahead and kind of start with what is a fierce conversation. I want to just kind of give you a brief definition of that and where this material comes from. This material is not mine. And it's based off of a book by the same title, Fierce Conversations. And several years ago, Keller Williams has, Keller Williams has always I got exposed to Fierce Conversations back in 2006. I don't know when the relationship with leadership and conversations and Fierce and Keller Williams came about. And I know that Diana had the vision of purchasing the licensing rights to Fierce Conversations so that we could really take this out to a lot of our associates. It's based off of the book Fierce Conversations. I became certified as a facilitator and a trainer, and I fell in love with it the first time that I used it because it had so many practical tools and techniques for really handling all types of conversations, whether it's running team meetings, whether you do some coaching and consulting. Delegation is one of the conversations. And then, of course, the confronting. So the Fierce Group Coaching Program is actually an 8-week program, and here's what it's designed to do. Number one, it's going to help you enrich relationships with everyone that is important to your success, both personally and professionally. I mean, think about it. Conversations, all the results that we have in our business, actually, they are from conversations. It's the way that we build relationships. And it's also the way that you build your relationships on the personal side of your world as well. It's through our conversations. You can improve your leadership. You will improve your workplace conversations, create and build alignment and collaboration. here's what is so exciting. There's actually a conversation model that you will learn inside of the Fierce Group Coaching Program that will help you gain alignment and collaboration with people that you are working with. So whether you're in leadership inside of a market center, whether you run a team, or whether it's just you as a single agent, you need to be able to establish alignment and collaboration with your clients and in the transaction itself. So it has so much application in how we can have more effective communication and get alignment and collaboration to reach the outcome that we're working towards. And it will increase your business with stronger relationships and more referrals. I want you to think about that. We are in real estate, we are in the relationship business. And there is not another tool, there's not another area where you can be more effective in order to build stronger relationships than with your conversations. So this is really a conversation communication, how to really improve on that. And so that's what Fierce Conversations Group Coaching Program is. Now, the idea I want you to think about is that what gets talked about. I want you to think about this from both your personal and your professional standpoint. What gets talked about and how it gets talked about will determine what will or will not happen. Oftentimes, I think we find ourselves with our conversations, we're on autopilot. Sometimes we're having the same conversation over and over again, expecting something different to happen. And with the way that we talk about it kind of determines what will or won't happen. I want you to think about our business is fundamentally an extended conversation with our clients, our customers, our team members, our co-broke agents. And yet a lot of those conversations are failing or they're unreal. What I mean by unreal is we're not really saying what we mean or what we need to say. Even worse, we have missed conversations due to avoiding it, lack of skill, procrastination, fear. From an agent's perspective, I want you to think about that seller that you have. You need to get a price reduction on that house. And sometimes we miss that opportunity. I know when I was a team leader, when I looked at the cause for a lot of expired listings, it was because of the lack of communication. So if you're looking at your own business or you're looking in your market center and there's a lot of expired listings happening, or we're not having more our listings sold to listings taken conversion is not at that 75% mark that Gary Taylor teaches us that we need it to be at, a lot of times it's because of a missing conversation. So why do Fierce Conversation for you? Let's talk about that for just a moment. First of all, Fierce Conversations, it is going to teach you how to ignite productive dialogue with clients, with staff, with team members, even in your own families and friends. So I want you to think about in your business currently, are the conversations are your conversations creating clarity or are they causing frustration and confusion? And I want you to think about what is the lost opportunity and income that is occurring as a result of that. Now, I want to go from a professional standpoint here for just a moment because I want to show you the impact, the financial impact that conversations can have in your business. So I'm going to just kind of use some numbers here for just a moment, okay? First of all, cost of failed and missing conversations. Lost commissions through poor negotiations. Taking overpriced listings due to a missing conversation. Lost referrals due to poor connection and weak relationships. Lost time and money due to missing conversations or expectations, and basically then we settle for substandard performance by team members. Let me give you an example of this one based on a participant that we had at Fierce Conversations. He ran a team. And one of the things that he discovered is he had hired this person as a buyer's agent and really just had this incredible, really believed in them and was so excited about having them as part of the team. And yet this person was showing up and really missing the mark. Like the performance just wasn't where they needed to be. The expectation that this team member had versus what this person was giving them, it was a gap. And yet he wasn't saying anything. Through attending Fierce Conversations, he learned a conversation model. And he went to this person and they were able to actually have a conversation. He actually used the team conversation approach in which they discovered that there was really a gap between realities is the way I'm going to look at it. I'm going to introduce you to a concept here in just a moment on this call talking about context and how context happens. But let me give you an example about what happened here. So the leader of this team, he had a context. He had a reality about what this team member was going to do. And the team member was missing the mark. Then on the other side, this team member, he had his own version of reality and what was going on. And the problem is that they were both going in a different direction. So by implementing the conversation model, they were actually able to have productive dialogue and to see how their realities were different. And then they were able to close the reality gap in such a way that where this leader of this team really thought that he was entering into fierce group coaching in order to discover how to have the conversation to let this person go, what ended up happening is through that productive dialogue, this person became, by the end of the 8-week course, became one of his most valued team members because of the fact that they had closed the reality gap. So often, we don't have those type of conversations, and we end up settling for substandard performance, or sometimes we let somebody go, not realizing we could have had that conversation, and we could have not only closed the reality gap, but then that person could become one of your greatest assets. Another kind of cost of a failed or missing conversation, work being redone as a result of misunderstanding. I see this all the time. It's one of the reasons why we have the delegation model as part of our Fierce group coaching, because sometimes we have internal obstacles that are keeping us from really delegating at a high level. Most of the time we're delegating tasks. And what happens is you'll understand how to actually delegate the responsibility versus just the task. In that particular model, we talk about how one of the obstacles why people don't delegate is because the person didn't do it the way that they wanted it done. And so then the person spent time doing it. And then because of the missing conversation or because of the lack of misunderstanding, it didn't get done the way that the person needed it to be done, and so then they do it again. That can be extremely expensive. And it also prevents other people on your team. The way that you really grow in your leadership is you help develop other people. Finally, there's a misalignment and a lack of collaboration within a team or a group. It's really difficult in the team conversation model that you'll get introduced to. You're going to understand how to really get everybody's buy-in so that even if you don't maybe follow the recommendation that somebody gave you, because they were asked, because they were involved, they feel valued, and therefore they actually perform at a much higher level. When you have misalignment or a lack of collaboration, what you will find is people are only giving you the bare minimum, and then that will continue to reduce because they don't feel valued as a team member. They don't feel it makes a difference. What if you could flip that? What if you could, through learning productive dialogue and conversation models, you could actually get more out of people than what you expected through having alignment and a lack of collaboration? Let's take a look at an actual financial gain. Okay, let's look at one of those areas that I just mentioned to you and the value that you could be putting back in your pocket. I always like to have conversations that turn to looking at what that would mean as far as bottom line into your business, because that's really what it's all about. So let's just look at the one area, lost commissions from referrals. Okay, I want you to look at that, and I want you to think about what Gary has taught us is that this is our best business source. When we can get referrals from other people, which basically increasing referrals from clients that you already have comes from delivering great customer service as well as having a great rapport and a great relationship which comes from your conversations. So we've actually found that about 21% of an average agent's business is actually a result of repeat business. Now, some of you on this call may be brand new agents, and so I want you to understand that this would be something that you're feeding for the future, because you may not have repeat business due to you're just getting started. And yet, the way that we get these referrals is through our conversations and through our relationships. So let's just take a look at an example that I've given you here on the screen. Let's say you have 36 transactions for a 12-month period of time. And let's just say that you're that average agent in which 21% of those transactions came from repeat or referral business. That would equal 8. So 21% of 36, that would be 8 total transactions. Now, I'm just going to use an average commission of $4,000. That would be equivalent to $32,000 that's as a result of your ability to connect to people and to have effective relationships in which they wanted to give you referrals or repeat business. So I want you to imagine, as a result of using your skills from fierce conversations and establishing a higher level of relationship, and the conversation strategies and the conversation models that you'll also learn, even if you added one more referral as a result of that, your rate of return on investment from attending the group coaching would be $3,700. Just one referral. And here's what I know. When you really implement the fierce conversations, you'll end up getting more than one referral because you'll learn how to have better relationships. I have had individuals that have shared with me, as a result of learning and implementing the tools and the strategies and the models of fierce conversations, they have shared with me how it saved their marriage. They have shared with me how it improved a relationship with their teenage children. I had one in specific. She's an assistant team leader, and she had twin teenage boys. And she said, as a result of implementing the fierce conversations, principles, and models, she actually has a relationship with her teenage boys today. So I wanted to just kind of share with you a little bit about what's in it for you when you really implement fierce conversations. So let's go through the goals of fierce. There are 4 goals basically inside of a fierce conversation. The goals are basically, all 4 of these are, they're required in order for it to be considered a fierce conversation. Now, let me just quickly tell you that the definition of a fierce conversation in its simplest term is one in which we come out from behind ourselves into the conversation and make it real. I'll say that again. A fierce conversation, the simplest definition, is one in which we come out from behind ourselves into the conversation and make it real. And a lot of times people, they kind of fear that real conversation, and yet I got to tell you, it's the unreal conversations that scare me. I want to have real conversations. So the goal of a fierce conversation is to have all 4 of these in place for it to be identified as truly being a fierce conversation. So the first one is interrogate reality, yours and theirs. And see, it's the reality that allows you to make the best possible decisions for your team and for your clients. We have to interrogate reality. I mentioned to you earlier about this reality gap, and a lot of times that's what happens. See, we each have our own way that we're looking at things. I'll give you a perfect example, or you can just identify this for yourself. Think about how many times you've gone to the same event, or maybe if you've got siblings, maybe you guys have talked about an event, maybe it was a family vacation or some other type of event, and you're kind of telling the story, and you hear your sibling telling the story, and you're like, what are you talking about? That is not what happened. And you can even kind of have some discussion and arguments about what happened. Well, what really happened was that you each walked away with your own reality. And so we have to interrogate my reality, how am I looking at this, and the other person's reality. By doing that, it will provoke the learning. You'll then understand how somebody else sees the situation. You hear the input and the opinions of others so that you can, again, make the best possible decision. Now, the other thing that you will do is you will learn how to handle your toughest challenges and conversations. And the purpose of that is to free up your energy to take care of the things that really matter. So oftentimes, where I see this one show up is it may be a difficult conversation. We're not quite sure the words that we need to use. And so what we do is we put that conversation off. And by putting it off, we end up then creating an even bigger story of how that conversation is going to go in our heads. In fact, we may so talk our way out of it that we never have the conversation. And I have literally had people put conversations off that they needed to have for years, never having them. And then when they go back and have the conversation, they go, wow, it was so much easier than what I thought. With fierce, the goal of fierce conversation is to learn how to handle those right when they come up so that we don't make them bigger than what they really are. And then, of course, finally, better relationships, higher level of satisfaction for your customers and your team members. So I want to kind of go to a little bit of looking at this reality and provoking the learning. And what fierce really is a contextual tool. Now, what I mean by that is this reality that I talked about, we have our own reality. And what happens, I'm going to call it context. So I want you to imagine it as though it's a window, or maybe it's the pair of glasses that you wear. And for all of the information that you're taking in, it goes through these glasses, which basically is our context filter. Now, our context, where does our context come from? Well, it's from our attitudes, it's from our opinions, it's from our beliefs. And when we hold on to them long enough, they become our truth, and we don't even question them anymore. So whatever our context is, we then gather evidence to support that context. It's how we see things. It's how we experience things. An event then is simply an event until we assign the value to it through our context. And a thing is just a thing until you define it, right? So let me give you an example. For some people, a spider is a cute little creature with a lot of legs. Not for me. For me, I don't like spiders, so for me, it may represent fear. And it may cause me to jump out of my skin, stand on a chair. I used to I would grab anything to spray a spider when I would see it. And so I actually would spray it even with hairspray, because I thought, well, if I can spray it with hairspray, then it will stick. And then I would put a glass on top of it, and I would wait for somebody to come home to get it. Even when it was dead, I didn't want to look at it. Now, how you view spiders is not most likely going to have a significant impact on your life. And yet, I want you to think about how that's just a context of the way that I looked at a spider. And what are some of the other contexts that you have in your world that does impact your life? Think about how you view your current position. How are you viewing your the co-broke agents that you work with? How are you looking at your coworkers? Maybe your management, maybe just your market center in general. Because how you view that and how you view yourself can greatly impact not only the tangible, but the intangible results of your business. We give every event or everything that happens to us its significance through our context. And then we gather evidence to support our context. It's powerful. Our context is really powerful because it influences our thinking and it influences our behavior. So you can think about this. So think about how many of us like to be right. And if I could see everybody's hand, we would all raise our hands because we all want to be right. I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and says, I think I'm just going to be wrong all day. I mean, how much fun is that going to be? What a rush. I don't think any of us are in danger of wanting to lose being right. Okay. And yet sometimes we're so busy being right that we might forget what being right actually means. And sometimes just our need to be right can actually override our need to be happy, our need to be more successful. There were times where we can think about being right about something or someone and how that became more important than the results that you really wanted. See, you have the right to choose your context, by the way. Context can be changed. The question is are you looking at it from that perspective? So let me give you an example. If you have the context that buyers are liars, that's a good one that sometimes we hear, right? I want you to think about if you have the context and you believe buyers are liars, and it's not the context I have, but I want you to think about having that context of how that could impact when you're working with buyers. So the question isn't whether you're right about that. I mean, have there been buyers that have lied before? Of course. Everybody probably has. But the question is, by having that context, are you getting the result that you want? See, sometimes our context gets in our way of getting what we want. So inside of Fierce, when we explore our context, it's not about the other person being right and us being wrong or vice versa. It's simply a question of, is the context that I have around X, is that getting me what I want? Is it getting me more of what I want in my life? Because I can choose to be right about anything. Now, the reason that context is important inside Fierce Conversations is because a lot of times what I say may be misinterpreted by somebody else based on their context filters, their attitudes, their beliefs, and everything else. And if we don't interrogate what they just heard and how they're interpreting that, we can be misunderstood. You guys are all doing it on this webinar right now. You've taken everything that I've said, and sometimes you're putting your own spin on it. And that's good if you're applying it in a way to make it real for you. Where it can become a problem is when you interpret what you think I said, and that wasn't the meaning that was implied. I mean, when you really think about some of this, it's amazing that we ever understand anybody. And yet in Fierce, what we do is when we can just understand that it's just a context. If you hold a context that this webinar was going to be lousy today, well, then you'll screen all of the information and prove yourself right. We gather evidence to prove our context. So basically, it's a judgment that you're having on whatever it is that you're experiencing. Think about some of the people that you want to have conversations with. What is your context around how the conversation is going to go? What's your context around the individual? If your context is not going to give you an outcome and a result that you choose, you simply change your context. It has so much application. Today, you could take just this one concept of changing your context around something. Let's say you need to get some price reductions today. What's your context around that, and how can you change it? All right. I'm going to pause for just a moment and see if anybody has any questions or concerns around what I just shared as far as the goals of Fierce Conversations and the context. If you have a question, if you want to type it into the question window, I will read the question as well as give an answer, but I want to give you that opportunity. I know we've got a lot of people on the webinar today, and you may have a question about what I just shared with context or the goal of Fierce Conversations. I want to pause for a moment and take those. If you have a comment as well, you're welcome to share your comment. All right, so not seeing any questions come in, and if you do, please let me know. What I'd like to do now is I want to shift a little bit and talk a little bit about what you will gain from, talk about the agenda of what fierce conversation is. And I think I have another. Oops, I had another slide before I went to that. I apologize. So the difficult challenge is that there are not a lot of courses or opportunities to identify what you are currently doing that is not getting the results that you seek, or how to implement and learn more powerful ways of communication. I think it's why I'm so passionate about Fierce, because, I took courses on communications when I was in college, and I never, they may have given you some communication kind of things of, how to do this and how to do that, and yet what Fierce does is it helped me identify what was it that I needed to do differently to get a different result. And it wasn't so much about the communication as it was about how to communicate, what was actually involved in the conversation. Okay, so let's talk about what you'll get out of the actual program. There's 8 total sessions. All of them are recorded. We're going to start with the objections, the definitions around that. We're going to lay a foundation, basically, and we're going to talk about ground truth and emotional capital. Emotional capital is your most valuable asset that you have. It is not how smart you are. It is not how good looking you are or charming you are. If you really want to get somewhere, it is how do you build emotional capital with people. And I want you to look at it in terms of every single conversation that you have, you are either making a deposit or a withdrawal into that individual's emotional bank account. So we're going to really explore that, because it's one of the ways that you really build relationships. We're going to cover 3 transformational ideas. They're basically, they're the groundwork. That's what we're going to build all the conversation models off of. Then we're going to cover 7 principles. The 7 principles are going to be the how-to. How do I have these fierce conversations? What is it that I need to practice? And we're going to cover all 7 of them. And then we've got 2 powerful conversation models. The models that will build alignment, collaboration. We're going to learn to delegate effectively and develop your people. And then common mistakes that people make when we're attempting to have a difficult conversation, we're going to cover those, and as well as giving you tips and strategies all throughout of how to hold successful, powerful conversations. So we're going to explore the connection between your conversations and your personal and professional success. So that's what we're going to be covering in the 8 sessions. All right. There's lots of ways that we can informally do the conversations, and I want to share one with you very quickly. Now, one of the things I want to say to you is Fierce Conversations is not about learning scripts. There are strategies, there are models, but it is not about you say this and get this, because in conversations, you can only control your side of the conversation, okay? So I want to just kind of give you an example of this. Let's say you're working with a seller that wants to price their home too high. And so a lot of times we go into the conversation and we just want to kind of convince them. And instead, if you can use this model, this may help you. The first thing that we're going to do in that step is we're going to identify the issue. So the issue in this example is we want to price the home too high, right? Out of the market. That can be the issue. And so you would simply start the conversation, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I want to have a conversation with you about the fact that you're wanting to price your home out of the market. That would be a perfect way that you could identify that issue. The second thing you want to do is you want to identify why it's significant. So here, I like to say you would actually word it by saying what's at stake. So again, it would sound something like, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I want to have a conversation with you about the fact you're wanting to price your home out of the market. What's at stake is you're not going to get your home sold in time for you to arrive to your new home and your job in the new location. So that's those 2 pieces. The next one is you want to identify what is the ideal outcome. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, my ideal outcome for you is to get your home sold. Then you go through relevant background information. That would basically be the market. You could share that with them. Then you could identify what have you done to this point as a realtor, as a professional. You could identify what the research is that you've done. Finally, options. You would give the option of where is it that you're looking to price the home. And then finally, what do you want from them? You want them to price the home to sell. So let me give you just kind of idea. This is a team conversation model, and it's got so much flexibility, and you can do it in such an informal way. So I'm going to just kind of run through what that may sound like. Again, this isn't a script. I'm just kind of giving it to you, and I want you to see if you can identify all parts of that conversation. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I want to have a conversation with you about the fact that you want to price your home out of the market. What's at stake is that you're not going to get your home sold in time in order to be able to arrive at your location and start your new job. My ideal outcome is to get your home sold in the next 60 days. Now, I want to share with you what the market is showing us and where the home needs to be inside the market. Here's the research that I've done to this point. What I'm leaning towards is to price your home at $250,000. And what I want from you is the agreement to price your home to sell so that we don't waste any of our time and you can get to your next location. The thing I want you to understand is that the way that you enter into the conversation is how you emerge. When you can go into the conversation with a model that will allow them to participate with you, you're going to get better results. So that's just an example of the team conversation, of how you can informally use it by just taking the pieces of the conversation that need to be included. All right. So one final opportunity for questions, as we have covered some of the things that you could take away from Fierce Conversations today. And my goal is that the information around the context, that's something that you can immediately take with you today. And then the informal conversation, I gave you the example of somebody wanting to price their home too high. You can simply use that model of identifying the issue, why it's significant, etc. And you could use that today to build a collaboration and alignment. So any final questions that you guys have of anything that I've covered with you today before I give you the details of when we're going to be launching the next group coaching program? Going to give it just a moment because I know how sometimes there's a little bit of a lag between the folks we have. And typing questions. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide so that I can give you guys, and if you still have another question, please continue to do that. All right, so the next Fierce Group Coaching Program actually begins in a couple of weeks, April the 16th. It will be from 11:30 to 12:30 Central Standard Time, so please, if you're in a different time zone, apply that. All the calls are recorded. In fact, I have a lot of people that attend the session and then they go back and listen to the call because the sessions have so much content, and it's a way that they've been able to kind of implement Fierce Conversations at a much deeper level. The cost is $297. And again, the rate of return that we talked about earlier in just being able to get more referrals based on how to have more effective communication and build relationships, huge rate of return. All right. Total of 8 sessions. Again, they will begin April the 16th. So with that, any final questions that we have, or Paige, I don't know if you're still on, if there's anything else that you need to add to that.
I think you covered it. If anyone has any questions, please type those into the questions box located in your webinar taskbar.
Yeah. Great. All right. I'm not seeing any questions popping up, Paige. So if somebody does have questions that we didn't cover today, maybe you're just shy, didn't want to type it into the question box, please reach out to us is at fasttrack@kw.com, Paige?
Yes.
Or they're happy to contact me directly if they choose to. Debbie Frapp at kw.com. I'll be happy to respond to any of your questions that you have. And I truly look forward. I love the learning, and I love getting to know the participants in Fierce and seeing how implementing this has improved their lives, both professionally and personally. So I look forward to having each and every one of you guys in the next session that begins on the 16th of April. And with that, I guess we will sign off.
Okay. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you, Paige. I appreciate it. Take care.
Bye-bye.